Hello, today we are going to study how to find the end behavior of the graph of a polynomial. Now, before we go on to understand this, we need to understand how to analyze the degree and the leading coefficient of a polynomial. So, say for example, you have a polynomial p of x that is equal to negative 2x to the third plus 3x square minus 5. Now, the degree of the polynomial is always the highest exponent in the polynomial. Over here, the highest exponent is 3. So, the degree of the polynomial is 3. Then, the number or the coefficient of the highest degree or the highest exponent variable is called the leading coefficient, which is negative 2. So, before we analyze the end behavior of a polynomial, we should first analyze the degree and the leading coefficient. Once you have analyzed the degree and the leading coefficient, then for the degree of a polynomial, there are two possibilities. Either the degree is odd or the degree is even. So, say for example, if the degree is either odd or it is even. Now, if the degree is odd, then once again there are two possibilities for the leading coefficient, whether the leading coefficient is more than 0 or the leading coefficient is less than 0 in both the cases. So, when we analyze the degree of a polynomial, there are two possibilities, either it's odd or it's even. Once again, after you have analyzed the degree, then you have to analyze the leading coefficient, whether it is positive or negative. Now, when the degree is odd and the leading coefficient is positive, the graph will always fall to the left and rise to the right. Whereas, if the leading coefficient is less than 0, the graph will rise on the left and fall to the right. So, whatever be the case, whenever the degree is odd, the graph, when the leading coefficient is more than 0, will fall to the left and rise to the right. Whereas, in the case when the leading coefficient is negative, it will rise to the left and fall to the right. Similarly, when the degree is even, either both ends will go up or both the ends will come down. For the leading coefficient, when it is positive, that is when it is greater than 0, the graph will look something like this. And for the leading coefficient less than 0, the graph will look like this. So, whenever you have to study the end behavior of a polynomial, you need to study the degree and the leading coefficient, and then accordingly you have to decide on what graph it will look like. Now, once you have made the graph or analyzed what kind of a graph it's going to be, then this will be negative infinity, this is positive infinity. Now, when the value of x goes towards negative infinity, the value of y is going down. So, we say when x approaches negative infinity, the value of y is also going towards negative infinity. When the value of x is going towards positive infinity, the value of y is going up. So, x approaches infinity, y also approaches infinity. I'm sure you follow this. Now, let us look at the next one. This is negative infinity, positive infinity. So, as x approaches negative infinity, we can see that as x goes this way, the y goes up. So, y will be approaching infinity. Whereas, when the value of x is going towards infinity, the value of y, because it's going down, it's going towards negative infinity. That is how we analyze the graph. Similarly for this, as x approaches negative infinity, y is going up. So as x approaches negative infinity, y goes to infinity, whereas when the value of x is going towards infinity, it is still going up. So as x approaches infinity, y approaches infinity. In this case, this is negative infinity. So as x approaches negative infinity, y is going down. So y is going towards negative infinity. Whereas x approaches infinity, y is still going down. So y approaches negative infinity. That is how we analyze the end behavior once we have analyzed what kind of a graph out of these four we are going to have. Now let's get back to our question. We have the degree as 3. 3 is an odd number. So the degree is odd and the leading coefficient is negative 2. So negative 2 is definitely smaller than 0. So the degree is odd and the leading coefficient is less than 0. So we look at this graph. So the graph of this polynomial will look like this. And then once again we will study negative infinity. So as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches. Now it's going up. So it's approaching infinity. And as x approaches infinity, y approaches, because it's going down, it's negative infinity. That is how we start with the analyzing of the degree and the leading coefficient, and then according to what graph it looks like or it shall look like, we draw the graph and then we study the end behavior. I'm sure all this is going to be the basic concept for analyzing the end behavior of the graph of a polynomial. You may take a screenshot of this and then you may work out more questions. Thank you for watching.